Well, here we are, and I do get tired of talking a bit, but on these walks, a lot of times I have thoughts occurring, and basically making the video gets it out of my head for me in a way, so it's like going number two. But anyway, being out here, and as opposed to being in a box somewhere, man-made little, building, you might recognize how everything is in harmony. Everything is connected, all the forces, gravity, light, blah, 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 on and on and on and on. And not just here, it's the whole universe. And but the thing about people is that people create disharmony. So if you can imagine a universe where people or beings like us, independent, mental, living in the head type beings never existed, then everything would just proceed naturally, and there would never be any issues, what we call issues with, pollution and extinction of species and all this other stuff, wars and whatnot. So anyway, you might look at the disharmony we create as being horrific and, against creation and things like that. But then again, on the other hand, because of its novelty, because it may have existed, of course, before in other places, but it's a new experience in many senses that has never happened before. So in that case, are we creating it, or is the universe creating it? Good question. I'll leave that question with you. But another thing I wanted to mention was comic art. Now, I read comics when I was a kid and stuff, and in a way, I'm no longer interested in it. I don't go to comic conventions. I don't go in comic shops. I don't look at comics at the flea market or anything like that, because it's come to the point where I pretty much know what to expect. But because I'm still in the industry to some extent, and I still sell my own comics work, which is a bit different from what is out there. For example, this morning I was looking through a issue of Eerie, and I saw a story that I've reprinted from maybe 20 years ago, something like that. And it was incredible in a lot of ways, because it dealt with artificial intelligence, synthetic bodies, all kinds of things which are basically on the cutting edge of what people are discussing today's issues. So I'd already been there, Madame Tarantula, for example, basically in opposition to AI, to synthetic technological life forms, things like that. Created that 15 or 20 years ago too. So anyway, my work, what I do is I try to stay at two ends of the spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got, the highest quality or high art or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, really, not just the snob factor. And then at the other end, you've got the lowest of the low end, which could be, B movies, or, slasher movies aren't even on the spectrum to me. But what I try to do is to be at both ends of the spectrum and not in the middle at all. So if I tell a story in, the stupid childlike comic book format, then it has it's got the trash one, aspect, but it's also, I try to have a profound impact as well. And, that's probably a big reason why a lot of people miss the points of some of these stories. Maybe they get, I don't know, but I don't hear that much. I get some letters from the readership, but not that many. So anyway, comic art today. To quote my neighbor, nice couple, they're interested in what I do, and so I give them new issues of Eerie now and then and things like that. I gave them the mermaid issue and the other day, and she said, I like your comics, they're so easy to read, but she said, the other comics that I see, they're hard to look at. And I said, yeah, I know what you mean. They're chaotic, the forms overlap, it's hard to recognize the outlines, the coloring models and highlights things where it's not necessary, it obscures the line art, all kinds of things. And I go into that in detail in my Creating Comics book. But there are many reasons why this has happened. And part of it, I think, is publishers. So if a publisher hires someone to draw a cover and they have empty space in the cover, it's like, hey, we're not paying you for that. We're paying you to fill up every square inch with everything you possibly can. So that's why you got this overlap of characters and, you know, hundreds of superheroes all posing for you or flying toward you or whatever. And, you know, maybe the publisher feels they're getting their money's worth, but basically, in order to understand what you're looking at, you have to have what's called negative space. So just like this, it's like you recognize the hand because of the space around the hand. So if the hand were surrounded by more flesh, it would basically be camouflaged. So camouflage is actually the lack of a border between the form you're seeing and the background. So that's a big issue with the comics, because you see one of these covers and you are trying to decode it. You're trying to, you know, ascertain what exactly is in there. And you wander around, you know, and then you finally might, okay, well, this is, you know, 15 characters all doing things and stuff, and some are huge and some are small. And then, okay, you know, and then you put it in the bag and forget about it. Of course, a lot of the comic interior pages are like that as well. But anyway, trouble is that the industry tends to feed on itself. Fan art is, you know, kids grow up reading comics, then they want to draw them, and they wind up drawing what they saw. And so the influence isn't good. You know, their early influences artistically. And so it just winds up regurgitating more of the same. You know, I wrote the book about creating comics to address some of these issues. I teach also, and, you know, review people's work and stuff like that. I'm not actively looking for students or anything, because it is pretty time consuming. But anyway, on the slim chance that you have been wondering what the heck's wrong with the comic industry, well, that's a big part of it. And I won't go into the writer aspect either, but writers taking over, telling the artists what to do, and then basically separating writers, artists, comics into that rather than creators. That's why I called the book Creating Comics. So is that it? I don't know. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Adios.